All right, welcome to today's deep dive. Our guest is an absolute legend in every sense of the word. He's fought in 4 UFC weight classes, competed for world titles, and earned a name as one of the most intelligent fighters to ever step into the octagon. But now, he's fighting in a whole new arena. Bitcoin. He's the co-host of the Kenny Florian podcast, a color commentator for BattleBots and the PFL, a gym owner, a lifelong martial artist, and a proud Bitcoiner who calls BTC the ultimate underdog. Whether he's breaking down rear naked chokes or fiat currency failures, he does it with precision, clarity, and a warrior's mindset. Please give a big blockchain report welcome to the one and only Kenny Florian. Welcome to the show, Kenny. Our studio audience loves you. We are so excited to have you. How are you doing this Friday?
What an introduction. Hank, thank you very much, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just swell. We are so pumped to have you on the show today. We got a lot to talk about, so what do you say we just get right into it?
Let's do it, man.
All right. Well, Kenny, you have had an absolutely remarkable journey from being a UFC fighter to a commentator to now a Bitcoin advocate. Can you walk us through this incredible career of yours?
Gosh, yeah. I guess I've always been inspired by following my passions. I think I was always curious about like what I was going to do when I was older. I really didn't have much of a clue. I was always excited to do something physical since I was a young kid, had a lot of energy, a little bit timid, but when I had the ability to do something physical, I would just kind of do it for hours and hours and hours and kind of zone in. And I knew that, hey, maybe I could do that. But, the people around me said like, you got to go to college, you got to do all these things. And then, so you kind of get caught in just doing what everyone else is doing. My dad really wanted me to be a lawyer and go to law school. Ended up going to Boston College. I played soccer there and did martial arts as a kid, was fascinated by that. And, ended up because I was doing so much soccer and tennis as well, like traveling and all that stuff, I wasn't able to do martial arts. Reconnected with martial arts in college while I was playing soccer, and I was kind of doing that in the off season and really had such a passion for it. And decided to pursue that. Ended up getting in kind of a argument with the coach, and ended up leaving soccer and just going into jiu-jitsu full time. Had a near-death experience in Brazil while I was working a full-time job translating financial documents for a company in Boston, and I think it was that near-death experience that said to me, "Life is short. You got to do what you love. If you're not passionate about this thing and you are passionate about this other thing, why don't you pursue that and see where it goes?" And had no intention of being a fighter. I thought I was just going to be like a martial arts instructor. But it brought me down this whole crazy path. So I guess here we are.
That is wild. And if you don't mind me asking, how did you have a near-death experience translating financial documents? Like, what the heck? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a break. I had a little vacation, and I used that vacation, like always, to do something training related. I went to Brazil, and I was in Brazil. I was, I guess, hiking and doing a workout on this rock called Gavia Rock, Pedra de Gavia in Rio. And, we would hike up it as a workout. And one of these times we had kind of gone off the path a little bit. I was with a group of friends. We had just gone to the waterfall. So we were all kind of wet and our shoes were wet. And there's a lot of moss and dirt and all that stuff. And there were some steep areas. And I ended up sliding down the mountain. And as I was sliding down like feet first, my buddy went to grab me. I had a tank top on and he couldn't quite hold on, except during that process, he had actually swung me around. So now I was going head first off the mountain. I just felt air and it was probably just a couple second drop, but I had like a vision, like everything happened in slow-mo and like my whole life flashed before my eyes. I remember feeling like sad that I'm going to die in a rock in Brazil. Like, how am I going to get home? My parents are going to be disappointed that I died somewhere else and, was doing something stupid that I probably wasn't supposed to be doing. I remember feeling like a sense of regret of not pursuing this love for martial arts. And I ended up falling on this ledge, on this rock, rounded rock, and somehow did not hit my head. And if I had not fallen on that ledge and rock, I would have fallen hundreds of feet. And I remember just changing my life and being like, wow, I definitely could have died there. Life is
Wow.
short. I'm going to pursue my passion. And it was martial arts.
That's wild. So it took that life or death experience to then get back into the martial arts. Because you were mentioning
Yeah.
you got into a bit of a kerfuffle with your soccer coach. I'm like, man, that
Yeah.
must have been really bad. 'Cause that's what drove you to fighting after
Yeah.
that.
No, exactly. And one passion kind of was no longer a passion, soccer. It ended up kind of becoming more of a job. It wasn't as fun. And I just kind of felt like I was, kind of getting screwed over by the coach a little bit. And I'm sure he has a different perspective on it as well. But yeah, so anyways, that led to kind of going into martial arts full time. And yeah. So it just led me down a completely different path, and it was tough at times, but I always said that, like, if I was able to wake up and do what I love to do, even if I wasn't making a whole lot of money, I'd still be happy, and thankfully I was able to turn it into a career.
Yeah, it's a phrase I say on this show a lot. It's the man that loves to walk will always walk further than the man that loves the destination. And if you love what you're doing, every day doesn't feel like a grind. It feels like a step forward, right? So
Yeah,
that's really inspiring to hear.
Yeah, and I think it inspires us to kind of want to figure it out as well. Like, even if it's difficult, but you love it, I guess maybe similar to a relationship or something like that, or I don't know, raising a cute little puppy. Like, there's going to be some tough times, but because you love these situations, you're going to find a way to make it work, and hopefully and end up making it a success story in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, finding your North Star is really just as important as anything else, right? I'm sorry you almost had a death experience to get it, but hey, you found it and you're okay and you're here with us now. So it seems like it's all working out just fine. So we're so happy to have you.
I think sometimes, I guess similar to seeing our situation, maybe with like Fiat or whatever, and not being able to see what Bitcoin is, we get caught in these mind traps of like, this is what everybody is doing, or this is what the people around me want me to do. So maybe this is what I should be doing. And, sometimes we don't think for ourselves, or really think about what we truly want. And you can get caught in these traps, in these paths that maybe aren't authentic to yourself. And then, and it takes courage. I think even if you have a lot of ability, you still need courage to take that next step and do something a little bit differently. And it was a nice reminder for myself to follow what I'm passionate about, where my heart is.
Yeah. And you faced these numerous challenges along the way, and you fought in multiple weight classes. Do you feel like your fighter's mindset has shaped your approach to new ventures like cryptocurrency or specifically Bitcoin at all?
Yeah, I think that there's this pursuit of truth that needs to happen when you're a martial artist, if you want to be the best that you can possibly be. So you can't just ignore anything. And in fact, you probably have to investigate everything. Otherwise, that one technique, that person who is giving you advice, that training methodology, that diet, that food, you can get down to a lot of specificity, but like, there's so many things that you can overlook in this game. And combat is a truth teller. And if you're not going out there with all of your tools, or all of your weaponry, all of your physical capabilities, with the right mindset, then that could be the difference between winning and losing. So I think that it teaches you to really be more of an investigator, and to look for also new and creative ways to be successful. You can't always fall like, it's certainly important to follow what makes someone successful, but you also need to go even further and figure out what's going to allow you to maybe lead the way in certain things. Like, what is going to be something that is going to separate myself, as far as, having a new wrinkle to my game, or a new weapon that other people aren't thinking about. So it really is important to think outside the box and think of ways to make yourself successful. So Bitcoin was one of those things. And even then, even with that mindset, I think I overlooked it initially. So it is important to really investigate before you dismiss anything, for sure.
Yeah. And you, like, as you say, like, someone who seems to be a very curious human being. I mean, you're known for your work initially in the octagon, or I don't know what different shapes they come in aside from the octagon.
Yeah, the octagon. You nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. And aside from being like a legendary champion and a fighter, you're also known for your work on BattleBots, which is like one of my favorite shows growing up, especially, and your podcast. How do you feel like these other endeavors reflect your interests outside of MMA?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, I think curiosity is a superpower. And it's important to look for ways that is going to help, like look for ways that are going to help you grow as an individual. I think that I've always been inspired by combat in a variety of ways, and looking at it from an engineering perspective, I thought was really interesting. Not only was it a great opportunity to do something a little bit differently, but it was a job that I never really saw on my radar. And as I investigated as a potential job, and then as I ended up getting the job, I just became more and more interested in it. It ended up providing a lot more value to what I do as a martial artist than I originally thought. Just because these are engineers that are competing against each other and looking for those same edges that I did as a fighter over others. So it was fascinating, and to see all the work that they put into it, it was really, really cool and inspirational. And you know what? It's a lot of fun as well. It's kind of like seeing a bunch of mini car crashes happen right in front of you. And I had the honor, I guess, and sometimes difficult job of explaining what's going on from an engineering perspective. So I really had to learn a lot of things on the fly. Like I remember getting this massive folder of stuff, which explained what the robots are doing, what kind of robots they are, all the engineering aspects behind the robot. We had to memorize the weight, the names of the builders, what they're doing, what the capabilities are of the motors, and whether it's brushless or not. There's just a lot going on from a physics perspective, which was really interesting and also helpful to me as a martial artist.
And it seems like that would be even like way more difficult to comment on than traditional fighting, because you have moves that are universal, rear choke holds, whatever. Yes. But then do you have names you have to make up, because every machine is different? It's like that's a hammer slam or a buzzsaw. Right. Like you're just making those up, or do they have real names for those?
100%, man. It's sometimes it was a little bit of both, to be honest, Hank. I would sometimes make stuff up or equate it to a fighting style technique like a suplex or something for a robot, or in some cases, I'm just like, what's the terminology for this, guys? Like, tell me what you guys are planning on doing here. So, whether it's a horizontal weapon or a vertical spinning weapon, all this stuff, like I did have to learn a lot of the terminology and try to, appease to all the fans out there who come from that engineering background.
Yeah, and as someone who's at the intersection of fighting and also now like mechanical robot fighting, do you think we're going to see a thing in the future where we're seeing like humanoid robots fighting in the ring? Will they be fighting autonomously, or are people going to be controlling them like a video game? Do you see that on the horizon? You probably would know better than anybody would at this point.
I definitely do. I would have thought that we were like quite a ways off. But after seeing what the Boston Dynamics guys are doing with their androids and robots and stuff, like it is amazing what those robots can do and how quickly they've advanced just in the last 5 years, let alone 10, 15, 20. So I don't think we're too far away from that. It would be very interesting. I think we're knocking on that door for sure.
Yeah, it's surprising me. I saw a video like recently, and I think it was like a Tesla robot, and they're not programming it to fight. They somehow programmed it to do like a TikTok dance. And I'm like, is that really what we want to be putting all of our research and development money into? But those are above my pay grade. So
please no, we don't need any more TikTok dances.
Please, God, we don't need robots doing them too.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit, because this is supposed to be a show about crypto and Bitcoin. So we're gonna move on to that, otherwise I'm gonna get fired. So I want to talk about Bitcoin. Everybody has that aha moment where they first learn about Bitcoin, and as you mentioned previously, a lot of times we don't get it at first, and it takes us revisiting it and kind of learning about it. Were there certain aspects of it when you did your own research that especially caught your attention, to where you're like, oh man, this is going to be a thing?
Yeah, I think the main thing which caught my attention, which is happening now in 2025, maybe a little bit before that, but was the fact that governments are going to need this. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that, like, getting a good investment is basically front running, big money essentially. And I remember hearing about my brother's buddy's dad who had retired at 50, and he got in on this company early, and he was retired at 50 years old. I'm like, wow, like that's kind of unusual, or maybe even younger than that. And I was like, that's kind of unusual. I remember I was like in my early teens, and I was fascinated by that idea. And so when I thought about Bitcoin and its capabilities, first of all, I thought that Bitcoin was going to be shut down by governments. And then the big shift for me was that governments we're going to need it. And when I realized that like no one was really thinking about it in those terms, or not a whole lot of people were thinking about it in those terms, and how not a, the price was still, when I bought it, $800. I knew that we had so much room to grow. And if I had the ability to front run, what I think is going to be an essential thing for countries and governments, like that this could be huge. So that was really the big shift for me, and why I kind of bought. And I learned a lot along the way, and how much more of a powerful technology it is for us regular plebs. But yeah, that was the main big shift for me, going from like governments are going to ban it to like, wait a sec, governments actually need this, and if governments are going to get involved, they're probably going to buy a lot.
Absolutely. When you talk about the governments too, it reminds me there's a really great film, and I'd be curious if you've seen it. Have you seen the film God Bless Bitcoin yet?
I haven't. No.
It's an awesome watch. And the reason I bring it up is they made a really interesting point in that film that I had never thought of before. And it was about how if governments were utilizing Bitcoin as opposed to regular fiat currency, it could actually solve a lot of the world's problems in terms of these global wars that we're financing. Because you can just print fiat currency to do a war here or do a war there, but countries are going to have to be a lot more judicious with Bitcoin, because you can't make more of it aside from what's already being mined. It's really a good watch. It's a whole separate conversation, but awesome. Definitely a good watch. God bless Bitcoin.
I'll check it out.
Now, you mentioned earlier in our conversation about some of the parallels between martial arts, and I think in the discipline there, and Bitcoin. I'd be really curious if you could elaborate on how those principles like discipline and resilience apply to, martial arts I get, but I'd love to hear about how you think they apply to Bitcoin as well.
Yeah, well, I think truth is a light. It shines brightest when it's time for it to perform and do its thing. And there's countless examples of Bitcoin strengthening companies, strengthening individuals, and their purchasing power and their ability to save. And anytime you're able to do some kind of a comparison to what is being used to what can be used, and then you see it actually perform the way it's supposed to, that's a powerful thing. It's like we all have different ideas of what we think is going to happen, but when you see it actually be executed and actually perform the way it's supposed to, that gives us a little bit more information. It gives us a little bit more intel, a little bit more truth on to what actually is going to happen. And, I think that was that moment for me of like being offered to buy it at like $70, and then, checking back in and being like, wait a second, it costs this much now? Like, interesting. Okay. I'm like, yeah, but it's probably going to go down again. And then you see it and it's like, all right, it's up even more. That's wild. Okay, interesting. And when I bought it at 800, like I think it was like maybe a couple weeks later where it was into like 1400 or something like that. It had gone up like significantly. I remember looking at the price. I was like, I didn't buy that much. I'm like, oh, wait a sec. It's gone up. Like, oh, wow. Like, that's crazy how that worked. Okay. I should probably look into this a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's like little things like that. Obviously number go up is a great way to kind of motivate you. Right. And if I'm being honest, that was a big motivator for me. But as you kind of go down the rabbit hole even more, you're looking for ways to be more efficient over time. And I think that's a huge kind of analogy for the way I saw fighting is it's not just important to be successful in fighting. It's important to be efficient during fighting. Like, okay, I can win a fight by standing in the middle of the octagon and just trading with someone, hoping that I land a big shot or enough big shots that I win. The problem with that is that I'm not thinking about the shots that I might take in that process. It's like, hey, Kenny,
Hmm.
that's great. You won that fight. You just ate 300 punches. Well,
Oof.
now, you're going to be brain dead by the time you're 40 or, what have you, or your
Yeah.
body's not going to be working at a certain point. So like, that's not smart either. So you have to look for ways with your training and with the execution of your technique to be very efficient. And I think that's also important with the way that we save money and how we look at money. Are you going to be putting in 80-hour weeks to just make fiat, or do you want to see that grow over time? And how are you going to go about that? Are you now going to spend another 12 hours a week looking at stocks and trying to figure out what's going to happen, or if the government's going to make a certain policy that's going to affect that decision that you made, or supply chains are going to be shut down, so now that affected your stock? Like how much time are you willing to put into something to see your money grow? And how valuable is your money to you? What did you do to make your money? Did you literally fight for your money? Well, that might be a little bit more important to you to make sure that you have money later on than, maybe, I don't know, just like inheriting your money, right? So it's like how
Right.
you see it and what kind of value you put on those things are super important. So our perspectives guide us so much. And if we don't have that right perspective and alignment, then I can be blind to a certain thing.
Yeah, and I was actually listening to one of your podcasts, and in the discussion you had there, you likened Bitcoin's proof of work mechanism to kind of the effort and discipline required in MMA training. Is that kind of what that you're talking about here? It's like you need to consider the bigger picture. When are the strikes you're going to take, and how are you thinking long term? Because like you said, you can't get hit 300 times in the head a bunch of times and expect any kind of longevity. Is that kind of how you see that analogy?
Oh, definitely. And in regards to proof of work, also, it's like I can't just go there with, I'm a fifth degree black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? And that, okay, that just means that I've been doing jiu-jitsu a long time, but my black belt won't fight for me. At the end of the day, I need to show whether I'm a good black belt, a medium, like a skilled black belt, or a high level skilled black belt. The truth is going to come out. I can't just go out there and be like, you know what, I'm just going to put this black belt in the center of the cage and I'm out, guys. I achieved this and I'm
Yeah.
out of here. I need to show whether I have the skill to compete at a high level or not. And, similar to proof of work or to, how Bitcoin is created, it's like there's two ways I can get it. I either need to put the money up, I need to spend money to get that Bitcoin, or I need to mine it with energy. There's no faking that. There's no stealing it. There's no ways around it. There's no like, oh, I'm, president of this country, therefore you must give me my Bitcoin. It's like, no, you need to get it just like everybody else. And I think that's a really interesting concept to me as well. Is there's no like faking it. There is no way of manipulating it into that way. Like there's only two ways to get it. The same way in the fight games, like there's only one way to be a champion or to get a win in the UFC. It's like you got to go out there and and work for it, and not to mention do the work behind the work. Not only do you have to go out there and fight, but there's an insane amount of preparation that takes place prior to that to do that. So it's all about showing your value and proving it over time. And Bitcoin's been doing that for a while and will continue doing that forever. And that's really exciting to me. And the fact that there is this level of meritocracy or fairness going on. I like that. And it's a truth teller in a lot of different ways, right? As far as your
Mhm.
ability to verify as opposed to just trust. And the fact that there is this decentralized network of nodes that are showing that you have the Bitcoin, or you just got paid, or you just sent the Bitcoin, or how much is out there, how much has been mined. So it's really a fascinating thing that can take you down the rabbit hole pretty quickly.
Oh, 100%. And
Yeah.
you mentioned kind of like a meritocracy or proving your worth. That is something I imagine as a fighter, as you were rising through the ranks, that you have to really develop this kind of underdog mentality, right, to help drive you and keep you going. Do you feel like Bitcoin has kind of had that too? Do you feel like that maybe is kind of the reason it appeals to you as a fighter, especially because it came, people were doubting it. They still doubt it today. We're going to hear it doubted when it reaches $1 million, and people are saying it goes down $100,000 again. People are going to say, oh, it's a Ponzi, it's a scam. Does something about that resonate with you at all, given your history as a fighter and coming through the ranks yourself and proving everyone wrong?
Hank, big time, man. Like, I remember my first world championship fight. I had not a whole lot of fights. I had maybe 7 fights or so. And the promoters, the matchmakers had basically fed me to this steroid taking fighter who had like 40 fights. He was literally, his nickname was the Muscle Shark. I won't get into like names and stuff like that. Maybe that's not fair. But he did end up getting in trouble for using steroids in a later fight. Anyways, you know, the expectation was for me to go out there and get sacrificed and build up this name. I had been on the Ultimate Fighter, and matchmakers, promoters, for better or worse, they will feed you to the lions if they can. And it's up to you. It's like, okay, that they can set the odds against you by setting you up against a fight at a certain time and kind of manipulate things in their favor in a way. Right. So there is a little bit of control in that manner. But at the end of the day, I still can determine my destiny by either performing or not performing. And while I did end up losing that fight, I went the distance, bloodied him up, had a really good fight. It was back and forth. He ended up winning for sure. No debate there. But I did prove myself to a certain extent. Right. I didn't get murdered. I didn't get finished. It wasn't an easy fight for him. And that kind of proved myself to the company that, maybe we can build this guy too and kind of, get behind him. So at the end of the day, I think like Bitcoin does that same thing in the same way that you can short Bitcoin, in the same way that, Jamie Dimon can talk trash about Bitcoin, because he has such a big voice out there and people listen to people like him. And that's just one voice amongst many when it comes to TradFi and all the trash that they've talked about Bitcoin. But what has Bitcoin done? It has only grown. And now these same people who are dismissing Bitcoin, Michael Saylor himself, right, are now its biggest supporters. So that's a fascinating thing of how Bitcoin can do that. And certainly, again, number go up can do that when you see that opportunity. But when you see what Bitcoin actually provides and what it's doing, to save a lot of people and save a lot of companies. It's a fascinating thing. It starts to twist people's minds up quite a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, and if you look at it, I think it's the fastest appreciating asset in the history of mankind or something. So it's like when people do the math, they realize like, oh, maybe number go up is something I should be paying attention to. For sure. And what I really love about that too is, and I love about you, and I was doing my due diligence on you, not in a creepy way, of course, is that I really appreciate and respect the educational efforts you put through via your platforms and how you aim to educate others about Bitcoin and its potential. What has that journey been like to you? Because you're really fighting the good fight. You're at the front lines and you're converting more people with arming them with the knowledge that you yourself had to find out on your own. What was kind of the impetus for that?
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. There's certainly a lot of people in the space that are doing the same. I've had the opportunity of discussing Bitcoin with a plethora of MMA personalities and fighters, and a lot of them have purchased it, which I'm really happy and proud about. So it can be a little nerve-wracking as well, when you are encouraging someone to put money behind a certain thing that a lot of people kind of have been ignoring. But that's how you make money in this game. Like, there's only so many places on the podium, and it's the few that make that initial risk that are going to make the most. And I think that it's very similar to the fight game, where so many things are misinterpreted, even like of a lot of the professional commentators, in my opinion. I don't want to talk bad about anybody, but sometimes it's like we dumb down the way that we see things, especially with the fight game. And I try to bring light to like what is actually going on, to all the intricacies and the hard work behind it. And Bitcoin is one of those things that so many people do not understand. And to me, I was one of those people initially as well. And so many people who start off as Bitcoin doubters become Bitcoin believers. And I think that it's important to kind of bring that to light and educate people on what it is and how it can help you, especially in a time where there's not a whole lot of value out there, in my opinion, to make a lot of money. And if you're looking for a place to put your savings, which is your energy and your hard work over your lifetime, then it's important to make those right choices. And for me, I see it as a part of my job to help people like that. And it's funny because the people that I'm closest to, in some ways, they actually don't listen to me. It's like, little Kenny from, I remember you when you were this old and you were in this town. And it's like, yeah, I got you, man, whatever. But sometimes it's easier to speak to someone who maybe isn't so close to you. So I try to spread the info the best that I can.
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced something very similar actually. So I've been in the Bitcoin space since like 2016. I used to mine a little bit. And my parents thought it was crazy. They're like, we don't get it. This is fake. And then since I started hosting this show, my mom is like #1 fan. Of course, she watches like all the time. She's like, it all makes sense now. I'm learning so much. And I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
it just takes people sitting down and listening, and then the dots start to connect pretty quickly because it just makes so much sense, And but as like go ahead.
I was going to say that there's so much to know. Like, it's almost like in order to understand Bitcoin, you also have to understand fiat, and you have to understand like what's happening with whether it's fractional reserve banking or, global politics and war and history. And, there is so much to learn. And oftentimes people see it from one or two angles. Like, I got it. I understand it. Yep. It's a Ponzi. I figured it out. Or like, I know how I can make it better. And you're like, God, it's kind of like, understanding trade-offs, because you need to understand trade-offs for fighting. I think also helps you to understand Bitcoin a lot as far as from like maybe the technical side of things. But yeah, there's so much to know. So it's not this like, oh, let me read a book and I got it now. It takes hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours. I've spent. I mean, I try to learn about Bitcoin every single day, and I'm still learning. There's a lot of other people that know way more than me. So it's a process.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the longer you're in it, the more you see how little things like a war over here or money printing in a different country or a bank starting to use it over here all affects it in a little different ways. And you get that more rounded out picture of it. And it just keeps making more and more sense as you're fully ingratiated into that space along, which is kind of how the world is operating currently. During your time as kind of being like a Bitcoin evangelist, have you encountered skepticism or any challenges when advocating for Bitcoin, especially, coming from a sports background, I could understand like knuckleheads dismissing you at first until they hear you talk and they're like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about 100%.
Right. No, or people being like, you're an MMA knucklehead. Like, oh, why should I be listening to you?
Right.
And maybe that's fair. But, I think that, I think that it's, I think it's healthy to be skeptical, right? It's healthy to be skeptical. What's not healthy is to not look into things, though. You don't want to just dismiss things without looking into it and actually really doing your due diligence of work, especially in something that's as complicated in Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin weaves its web into almost like all aspects of our life, like globally, and it's not this thing that you can just attain and understand just like that. I think, for the most part, unless you already have some kind of existing background in how things work, so financially, and so yeah, I definitely encounter resistance and skepticism and have repeatedly and continue to. And a lot of it is just from a certain mindset or perspective that doesn't allow them to see the other aspects. So many times, even if people are being scammed, a lot of times they don't want to believe that they're being scammed. It's like, are you telling me that my whole life has been a lie? Like that I've misunderstood things the whole time? It's like, get out of here. I'm going to keep doing my thing, young man. So a lot of people just don't want to believe that they've been wrong or that they haven't seen things. So it truly is an ego test. I know Jack Mallers has talked about that. It really is this ego test where people don't want to be proven wrong. And that, like, I've talked to people who are hedge fund managers, to, people in the banking industry, to, people who are, financial analysts. Like, we've had these discussions. Sometimes they come around to it. Sometimes they're halfway there. And sometimes they're like, no, man, this is what I do. I got this. I don't need Bitcoin in my life. And oftentimes, which is interesting, a lot of people who have a lot of money are sometimes the last ones to see it. And that, to me, I don't have a problem with, because it's like, you got a bunch of money. You don't see it as, you don't see Fiat as this melting ice cube because you have tens of millions of dollars coming in every year. Okay,
Right.
that's fine. So let me spend my time on the people who do need it, on the people who aren't making that much money. And if they don't see it, that's on them. And even then, it's like, I've taken more of a backseat to, like, try to talk about things that are going to get them to ask more questions than me just giving them the answers. And I've taken that approach in the last several years in how I teach martial arts as well. It's like, I want to teach them concepts and ideas and almost have them come to the conclusion themselves, because it's way easier for someone to think that they have the answer as opposed to be given the answer, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of
That makes so much
I've tried to use more Jedi mind tricks in that way of, like, getting them to arrive to the conclusions, than me just like, here are all the answers, man. It's like cheating on a test. It doesn't teach you anything. It gets you a good score, but you don't learn anything in that process. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can lead a horse to water, right? But it kind of, as you mentioned previously, it's like you kind of got the curiosity factor. You got to tickle people's curiosity so that they understand that, like, maybe I am thirsty. And then you can, like, present them the water that they'll now understand they need to drink, right? To survive or not lose 20% of their fiat value.
Absolutely.
And some people just like to it's easier to live the lie sometimes, right? I mean, it was like my old ex-girlfriend, Katya, who I never got to see and lived in Russia. And my parents told me, she never sees you, like, she's not real. And we had a really bad breakup and she kept asking for Venmo requests. And, like, it happens,
Right, yeah.
Katya, I hope you're doing well in Uzbekistan or wherever you are now.
Yeah, I hope you finish college.
Yeah, right. So I want to talk about kind of your future plans. As somebody who's gotten into this space and is reading the tea leaves and is connecting the dots more and more every day, do you have any of your own, like, upcoming projects or initiatives related to Bitcoin or crypto that you're excited about right now? Because you seem to see where the world is going with this, so I feel like you're at the tip of the spear with that.
I hope so, man. In regards to, what I'm doing with Bitcoin myself, no, like, I'd like to create some business opportunities where I can accept Bitcoin, and I guess I could probably do that today in some ways, but I would love to do more in regards to that. If there's one thing I like doing is trying to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. There really is never a time where you're like, yeah, I have enough. I'm good. I don't want to pass that on to my kids. I'm fine. They'll be good. Yeah. So
It's generational wealth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I'm happy with the Bitcoin that I have accumulated over time. I would love to continue to accumulate more and all that stuff. And especially in a time where it's still growing. So I guess the way I see it now is that things are happening really fast now in 2025, I feel like. And I think it's happening really fast because we've built up that kind of base. I'm in a community where, I guess a lot more houses, like, people want to live in this neighborhood. So people keep finding ways to, buy out other properties, to build more land so then they can connect more homes onto this property. And the reason I'm talking about that is that, like, initially things seem like construction seems like it's going very slowly. Like, you got to dig, and it seems like dirt's there forever. And there's, construction trucks there forever. And you're building, the underlying structures from, the plumbing to, the base, the cement foundation and that just seems like it takes forever. And then all of a sudden, once the homes are ready to be built on top of that, it's like things go really, really quick. You're like, oh, wow, that happened really quickly. That's wild. And I feel like that's kind of what's been happening with Bitcoin over the last 15 years or so, is that, like, they're building that foundation. We've been building it slowly. And it's a hard reality, but slow growth is the best growth, both professionally and I guess financially, and in a lot of different ways. Why? Because it's sustainable. When we see, like, this fast explosion of growth, many times it's not sustainable. And we've seen this kind of this high level of volatility in Bitcoin as a result. Sometimes when we do see those like pulses of like liquidity injected into the system, but we're seeing this slow growth overall, and I think it's extremely healthy. But now I feel like Bitcoin has embedded itself everywhere, like similar to like how bamboo grows. Like it all happens underground, then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, like that's a lot of bamboo. Like where the heck did this come from? This was all happening underground. You couldn't see it, and now it's too late to stop. And that's what's happening with Bitcoin, which is super exciting. So now, you're getting a lot of creative people building these businesses on top of Bitcoin or with Bitcoin. The financial engineering that Michael Saylor is doing at the moment is just insane. He's so far ahead of everybody else. And now everybody is, what do you know, trying to do the same thing. And so it takes courage, it takes creativity, it takes intelligence to see where it's going and how to build these things. And I'm not sure I'm there yet as far as like how to do it, but I would love to, I would love to integrate it into like, how I get paid for certain things. I've been, coming up with these courses of how to like teach people how to teach jujitsu and martial arts. And maybe that's a form of payment I could do in the future. But it's great to see where Bitcoin is headed, man.
Yeah, and you make some great points because if people talk about the big volatility, the swings, but if you scale back and you look at it during the whole span of 2009, 2010, whatever, it's a pretty steady rise, just up and to the right? Yes. But then people get these moments of big swings, and they're like, oh, it must not be real because only assets that do that are usually Ponzi schemes or something like that. But it's just like you're looking at this small little portion, and while Bitcoin has been slowly laying this solid foundation for almost 2 decades now. And like you said, like people kind of forget about that, and well, they're lost more Bitcoin for us, I guess, right?
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
So, and with them, I'd love to kind of get your opinion on some of the things that are happening right now. It has been a wild year for Bitcoin, as you and I both know, specifically with Bitcoin's recent price movements. Only a few weeks ago, we were in the 70s. We're back up near all-time highs. How are you feeling about the current market trends right now? Because it's kind of a mixed bag, right? Like Bitcoin's doing great, but then we also have like the president of the United States has his own altcoin, and there was the whole Libra disaster in Argentina, which has kind of taken us back a step or two. Like, how are you feeling generally about the Bitcoin market right now?
Yeah, it's still a teenager, and when we're teenagers, a lot of crazy things happen, and it's like Bitcoin itself, and this is so true. I'm not the first to say this, but Bitcoin itself is stable. Humans are not stable. They make crazy decisions, and as a result, Bitcoin price volatility, can get a little crazy sometimes. But you look at the consistency of Bitcoin over the last year and a half, couple years, like it's been like pretty steady growth. It's been pretty consistent, and even it's been boring at times. Dare I say, been boring. And those are good things. That it shows that we are having these flashes or these pulses of maturity now. That people are getting impatient with Bitcoin. It's like, why isn't it going up? It's like, man, the fact that it crashed down to 72,000. This is a sign of how far we have come in this space of where Bitcoin's at. And I think that people are trying to suppress the price of Bitcoin. That's my opinion. I think people are trying to keep the price down low a little bit. They're looking for ways to get in, whether they're buying it OTC or trying to short the price a little bit and trying to keep things low so they can get in on it. But I do think we're due for still these upswings. And I think that's still around the corner. The fact that we're pretty stable at about, 104,000 or so, is amazing. But I think we still have a lot more upside to go, not only for the rest of 2025, but I think that the cycle will most likely, this 4-year cycle will most likely be broken, because I do think that sovereigns, governments are going to be buying. I think it's going to be a mad race. I also think that the money printer is coming at a certain point, and it's not going to be a small print. It's going to be a huge print. And Bitcoin has proven to be, the fastest horse in the race. And I think a lot of money is going to come into the space. How long it sticks around for, I don't know. but I do think that I wouldn't be surprised to see the price of Bitcoin at least double from here.
Yeah, and you mentioned the cycle. Do you think the whole halving cycle methodology is kind of done with, right? Because before we didn't see institutions accumulating like we're doing now. I mean, the evil empire BlackRock owns over like 600,000 Bitcoin. Like, how much more proof do you need that people are taking this very seriously? Larry Fink was not a fan only a couple of years back, and now he's saying like it could be $500,000 in just the next couple of years. So do you feel like we're kind of entering a new era for Bitcoin where the halving cycle doesn't mean as much as it used to, and now it's kind of like get your hands on as much as you can because it's going to be gone pretty soon?
Yeah, no, I think it's a real thing as far as motivation and as far as like how much Bitcoin is produced versus how much is being bought right now. It's crazy. I mean, there's going to be a supply shock. I mean, it's happening a little bit here and there, but like we still haven't seen anything yet. Like, you look at how much between Saylor and BlackRock alone, and you can throw Fidelity in there as well. Like how much they're buying as opposed to how much is being produced now after this last halving. It's crazy. So I think that, people who talk about those Omega candles and all that stuff, like I definitely could see that happening. It's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. Yeah. Does it happen in 2025? I don't know, but I think it's going to happen. And it has to happen just because I think a lot of people are understanding more and more what they own. And I think that's the most important thing is, yes, it's the set, I think the first most important thing about Bitcoin is knowing what it is. And the second most important thing is buying it, because you don't want to just buy it and then, to see the price go up and be like, cool, I'm cashing out. It's like, no, dude, that's going to be your lifeline. That could change, that could be generational wealth at a certain point. So I think as people are understanding that, they're going to hold it. And as a result, the price is going to go up once there's more buying because people aren't going to sell when it hits a certain point. So I'm fascinated by that, and especially also in regards to like lending and custodying. Like banks are able to do that now, so I think there's going to be a whole lot of products, in regards to lending against your Bitcoin, which is going to be proven to be the best collateral you can have. It's pure value, and now that's going to cause people to be able to hold on to their stacks. So it's really exciting. I think we're due for some explosive growth, and I think we'll be seeing that this year.
Yeah, it makes me wonder too, and you mentioned the word suppression earlier, like are people even considering, as you kind of just mentioned a second ago, about the new financial products that are being built around Bitcoin? Like Xapo Bank, for instance, will give you I think it's like 9% or something, and you can borrow against your Bitcoin. Why would you ever sell it? And then another thing that I always wonder, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is to whether this is kind of already baked in or people just aren't considering it. We know Bitcoin has this 21 million hard cap, right? But there's speculation that there could be between 1 and 4 million Bitcoin already lost forever. Like I'm sure you've heard of the guy that had it on the hard drive, his wife threw away in the dumpster. He has like $1 billion worth of Bitcoin and at today's prices in there. Do you think that people are even considering that right now? Or is that already baked into the price?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think people are kind of forgetting about that, and there might even be more than 4 million. Who knows? It's like I hear so many different stories of people like that. I have friends that are like that have lost Bitcoin, sadly, and it's nuts. And so I do think that a lot of this idea of price isn't taking into account that a lot of Bitcoin will never be retrieved, like into the millions of Bitcoin, like you said. So these are things that I don't think people are anticipating, not to mention, the long-term holders of people who have traditionally bought assets and just held on to them. And if you understand what Bitcoin is, like so many hardcore Bitcoiners, they're going to hold on to that forever. And now with the banks getting involved, so long as, they're not rehypothecating and doing all that stuff and doing crazy stuff that we've seen in the past, I think that it's going to allow for the price to grow and for the asset to mature tremendously. You look at just the liabilities of us lending against our home, for example, versus what Bitcoin is. It's like people who lend money out will be asking for Bitcoin at this point. There's no safer bet for them. So I think that we are still in it's still in its infancy. So I think there's so much room for new products for lending, and as long as it's done well and done, you know, with trust. At a certain point, trust does need to be injected into this process because you are having banks and other lending institutions involved. But I do think it's interesting times are ahead.
Yeah, and you mentioned the word trust, which I love, because for people like you and I, we're doing our best to increase the public understanding and acceptance of Bitcoin, not just because it's good for us and we own Bitcoin, but also we see what a unique and important financial instrument this is going to be in the future, right? And we're very much, well, it is for us helpful as well for obvious reasons. It's important for other people too to make sure they're getting this piece of this very small pie. What do you believe are the steps necessary to help increase the public understanding and acceptance of Bitcoin? Because really, it's for their own good ultimately. You and I both know where this is going.
Yeah, no, I think so. Like, I think understanding, the time chain and what that is, and the supply schedule, and how we have relied on central banks and their whims to make decisions on interest rates and money printing, and and comparing that to a protocol that is consistent, that can be verified, not trusted, that is always going to be the same no matter what, that is for the most part unchanging. I think comparing that to the current system is something that a lot of people just don't understand, especially in regards to like savings and putting money away and looking at the results, over, I think, like, I assume it's still true, but like over a 4-year period, any 4-year period, if you've invested in Bitcoin, you haven't lost money. And you go back even further, 5-10 years, you look at the gains that you have. So if you have money that you can save and put away and know that you kind of won't need it, or let's say you're saving for your child's education and they are 5 years old and, you want to save for the university, it's like, these are dunk shots. These are things that are easy to do. And a lot of people kind of almost don't want to believe that they can just buy something and just wait. And a lot of times that is the hardest thing, for not only for people to believe that it can happen in that manner, but also to have the patience to do that. Sometimes doing too much is too much. Like, that's how you make mistakes, is like overthinking it or overdoing it and like doing too much. So, yeah, I mean, just look at the history results, and there's, whether you like it or not, companies like BlackRock and Fidelity are educating people about it. Now, they're not getting real Bitcoin. You have to buy real Bitcoin and put it away in cold storage for you to really have it, in my opinion. But they are helping as far as like, being a marketing machine for the asset.
You said doing too much. It kind of reminds me of that phrase, keep it simple, stupid, right? Like, buy Bitcoin, hold on to your Bitcoin. Is that maybe the advice you would give to someone who's starting to explore Bitcoin and the broader crypto space, aside from listen to your podcast and watch our show?
Yeah, no, totally. I think one of the best ways, and this was happening early on. I know Max Kaiser was kind of doing this, but it's like, you give them a little. I'm not giving anyone my Bitcoin as to give them a lesson, but I would, encourage people to just buy a little. Like, you want to learn about Bitcoin, buy a little bit and just watch it. What's the amount that isn't going to affect you that much? And just buy some today and then watch the asset grow. Like, that's what happened with me. Like, I, did see that aspect of the government thing early on, of like, okay, if I can front run all these people, they're going to need it. Like, but I bought a little bit and then, checked it a few weeks later. I was like, whoa, like that just grew. Like, okay, maybe I should study this a little bit more and see what this thing is that I just bought. And I think that's a powerful way. Just kind of seeing it in action. Sometimes it will go down too, but also, it is going to give you the impetus to like go out and learn about it. And why are these things happening? How are these things happening? So yeah.
So Kenny, as we look forward to the future, I love to ask this of all of our guests. We're looking forward 5-10 years in the crypto industry. What are you expecting and what are you thinking? Let's say 2030. What is your just personal opinion, not financial advice? Yeah. Where do you think we're going to see Bitcoin at in the next 5-10 years? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no reason why it can't be in that $1 million range by 2030. I think that, might sound crazy to normies, but it doesn't sound crazy to me at all. I think it's even possible, before 2030. But so as far as price, and that's just kind of a simple way of looking at it. But I think that I keep kicking my camera. Sorry. I think there's a lot of other possibilities in regards to products, like other lending products, and seeing those lending rates go down tremendously. I also think that it's going to be a whole different infrastructure as far as like a whole different economy that's built on top of Bitcoin. That people are going to be like, I don't want to be involved with this other thing. I want to be involved with Bitcoin. I know exactly what's going to happen. This is truth personified in a financial instrument. So I think there's going to be a massive, massive shift when it comes to not only how countries are dealing with it and trading, and their perspectives on war in general, but I also think how financial institutions are dealing with it. I think that they're going to be moving larger and larger percentages of how they think about things, but also like of their financial instruments over to Bitcoin. So I think to not have Bitcoin at that point in 2030 is going to be seen as silly. And right now that's shifting now. It's like, oh, you have Bitcoin, like that's starting to change, certainly because of price and because of all these other big financial institutions who are getting into the game. But by 2030, it's like you're going to be seen as a silly person if you don't have any allocation to Bitcoin or some kind of Bitcoin proxy. So that's going to be a massive shift. And more importantly, the Bitcoiners are going to be right. They were right all along. That's what's going to be.
They were. They were, not to toot our own horn, but we were. And you normies out there, we were all normies at some point. Jump on board. Exactly. We'd love to have you. Kenny, I know you're a busy man, so we're going to let you go. But before we do, if our audience wanted to learn more about you and all the amazing things you're doing, hosting BattleBots, your podcast, an advocate for the good fight, where can they get more info on you?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, man. You can check out what I'm doing over at kennyflorian.com. If you guys are interested in studying martial arts, if you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, I have an instructional over there and have a YouTube channel if you guys want to check that out as well. I'm kind of doing a bunch of interviews and things that I'm passionate about over there. Some shooting over there, a lot of techniques for jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts. And you can check me out on social media at Kenny Florian. So thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Oh, the pleasure was all ours, Kenny. You're an absolute legend. Thank you so much for joining us on the Blockchain Report today. We'll have you back anytime. You're the best, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, my friend. It was a great time having you.
Awesome. Thank you, man.